Dudes, what's crack-a-lackin'? So, I wanted to talk about what makes a good guitar. Man, that is a loaded question, but I have a few ideas. I've purchased a few of them through the years. I've been playing guitar, sadly, 33-ish years. Ugh, this should be way better than I am, but nonetheless, I bought a lot of guitars. And I think it comes down to four things. The first is quality materials. Guitar has to be made of quality woods. In my opinion, mostly name brand electronics in it, I think go a long way. Then once you get all those nice materials together, then you have to well craft the instrument. I mean, you have to assemble it to all the proper specifications that is set for that kind of guitar. That's really important. So, this has to measure, if it's a Fender style guitar, 25 and a half inches. If it doesn't, it's not going to stay in tune worth a crap, or it's not going to intonate very well. Then, once you get all the measurements and you can put it all together, then it's how do you finish the guitar? And what I mean by finish, it's not just what color are you painting it, it's do the fret ends feel nice? Is the nut cut right? Is everything placed properly? Is everything attached properly? And then once you get all that magic together, the very last piece to the puzzle that you will end up doing to every guitar, even if it's perfectly done well, is you have to set them up. Every guitar has to be set up. Even the most perfectly constructed guitar will need to be set up. And if you can do those four things, that is what makes a good guitar. So, that would be a short video if I just shot that. But if you were to go to Guitar Center today and buy something that I think covers those four key items, what would you spend your money on, and how far can it go? So let's take a look. Let's go peruse Guitar Center's online website. Okay, for the sake of this video, I want to narrow it down to specifically electric solid body guitars. Now, that might not be your thing, but that's what I'm covering in this video. So, the way I look at purchasing guitars, I place them in about 7 tiers of guitars. Let's filter out the used guitars because we're just considering new guitars for the sake of argument for this video. So the first tier I would classify as the quote starter guitar. You buy a guitar for your son or daughter, or you're an adult and you finally have decided to learn to play guitar. These are essentially slabs of woods and 6 strings. They don't really care how well they're made, what materials they're essentially made from, and they use the absolute bottom of the barrel, cheapest electronics. They are affordable guitars. So the price range, I would say for these starter guitars is somewhere between $100, $130 to about $270. Those of you that have been playing guitar for a while, you know that these are crap. I mean, these guitars are about as much garbage as you can buy. It's almost essentially a waste of money. They are way better. Saying that, they are way better than they used to be when you would buy a guitar for this money, say 25 years ago or so. The CNC machines, they're well cut. They're well cut pieces of crap wood, right? They're just not all that made of much quality stuff. So that being said, if you were to buy a guitar in this price range, I really probably only recommend 2. And the first one would be this Epiphone SG style guitar. I think all in all, those guitars will generally stay in tune, which is really the most important thing at this price range. And if it's not the Epiphone SG, the other guitar I would suggest would be the Squier Telecaster, because they're pretty rock solid, even in this price range, at staying in tune. In fact, that would be my number one choice. Is just get the Squier Bullet Telecaster, whatever they're calling it these days. They used to call them the Affinity, whatever. They've always been around this price range of $180, and they're really good guitars for $180. I mean, there's not much to them, and they're really bright sounding. But you know, you will play a D chord, and it will generally stay in tune. And you can set these guitars up relatively easy, and they will play. So, I mean, there's a bunch of them. Stay away from the Ibanez's. Anything with a tremolo system at this price range, it's complete garbage. It will never stay in tune, ever. Never met one that does. These trim systems, I don't know if this, I think this is just a solid. Yeah, these are, even this Epiphone one with this slightly tilted bridge, they're a little bit quirky to intonate, but you can get them to intonate. And this guitar will generally stay in tune. You're going to struggle with the nut and the tuners to hold it in tune. But essentially, you're just trying to learn to play guitar at this price range. So the next category places us in about the 200, and I'm just going to go to straight to 300. It's about $280 to $399. And the guitars you're getting in this price range are essentially fancy starter guitars. So they're not made of any better material. But what they do is they start coming up with some weird exotic shapes you can buy. They actually use some custom finished woods. You know, here's a nice quilted maple top on this one. You know, here's some bursts. What else? Here's a Gretsch with some like Filtronic style pickups. Come in some different finishes. And that's essentially, here and again, another quilted maple top. You know, you're getting a little bit nicer starter guitar is essentially what these are. Not much, but they're made with generally the same similar inexpensive materials to construct these guitars. I wouldn't recommend buying any of these. It's just a waste of another $100-something. And you're not getting any bang for the buck to spend money in this price range. Steer away from this category of guitars, in my opinion. So, the next grouping, if we change the pricing here, and again, so the starter is $130 to $269-ish, and again, these prices vary, and sometimes they go on sale. The fancy starter guitar is about that $269 up, or $279 to $399 is what I was finding generally on the Guitar Center website. Now that puts us into essentially what I consider the beginner guitar, which is priced about $429 to $599 is generally what I found. And this is where you get into, you can pretty much pick any style of guitar now, whatever you're into. If you like, hey, you can pick up a Jazzmaster, a nice Squier Jazzmaster. I bet that's a nice guitar for $500. You can get into the Jackson and the Floyd Rose stuff. You know, that's a low end easy for me to say, Floyd Rose trim system. You know, they go up in tiers when they're made with different metals, and that's important. This is not as nice a quality trim system as like the Floyd Rose 1000 or whatever they call it. So keep that in mind. You know, you can get ESP starting to make you some guitars at this price range that are decent quality. These are the quote beginner guitars. These will generally stay in tune. They're still not made with the super nice woods. They are nicer than the starter woods, and they are generally made with still inferior electronics, in my eyes. I mean, again, you're getting a lot of the pot metals in here with these bridge systems. You're getting a lot of just the Chinese electronics, which generally work. I mean, they're going to work fine, and they put them together okay. But the tolerances in these electronics are not great, and the switches will wear out. The volume and tone knobs will wear out. They will last for a little while, but you will end up having to replace a lot of that stuff. So that's the beginner category. We can thumb through another page or two of this. There's a lot of guitars you can buy in about this price range. You got some nice G&L guitars. I would recommend those. I would still stay away from these Ibanez guitars, especially with the Floyd Rose systems. They just do not stay in tune, in my opinion, at this price range. This Jackson's in the same boat as that Ibanez. It's made of almost the exact same materials. I'm sure these Deans are okay. I'm not a big fan of Dean guitars, but whatever floats your boat, not mine. The Epiphones are nice in this price range. Yeah, you can start getting into the Chapmans. And again, this isn't a fully spec'd out Chapman now. You're still getting some of the inferior electronics in it. But the quality woods are there in the Chapman at that point. A Squire at $600 is a little on the top end of that. I would not pay $600 for a Squire Anniversary Edition. Again, you're just paying for stuff at this point. Paying for essentially, I mean, you're essentially paying for a guitar like this as a collector's item. And it's at best a beginner intermediate instrument. So, there's a top end to that, what it's actually worth. Okay, so that gets you to there. And then the next price range, if that's what a beginner instrument's getting you, a beginner guitar, then we are into what I would consider an intermediate guitar. And this is when they actually are starting to still made, in Indonesia, in China, in Korea. These are kind of where all these guitars are still made at this price range. Some really nice guitars. Schecter's making an amazing guitar at this price range, and maybe the best of the bunch for bang for the buck in this price range. Here's a perfect example. And if I was to just go out and buy a guitar about this price range, this Nick Johnston traditional Schecter Strat style guitar, that's a beautiful instrument. I bet it plays immaculate. I know it has this nice baked rosewood neck and stuff, or a maple neck. I'm sorry. Just a gorgeous guitar. I bet that thing plays like butter. Again, you're getting into these still crummy trim systems. Maybe they're starting to get a little better at this price range, but some of these hardtails, that's a win. These things will stay in tune. Again, all these Tune-o-matic bridges, I trust them. They're really well made. I've not tried one of these EVHs at this price range. Again, you're staring at these inferior Floyd Rose systems at this price range. And for me, a guitar that stays in tune is the most important thing. If it doesn't stay in tune, it's not a good guitar to play. It's the most important thing it does is stay in tune. Yeah, I mean, again, you're getting into some fancy woods. I mean, here's some burl. Looks like a cap on that. Again, I don't know how thick some of these caps are. A lot of the flame maple caps, they're probably pretty thin veneers. They're not a good 1/2 inch cap
like you would find on a Les Paul or a PRS. So I mean, we're spending a lot of money here. I mean, here's Fenders. They finally decided to show up around $800. That's where you're starting to get a name brand guitar, one that Fender's actually comfortable slapping their name on. So you're starting to get into something that's made in Mexico / US. It's right on the cusp there. Here's a nice 59 style Les Paul. I don't know if that one will stay in tune. Most of the Les Pauls don't. But at this price range, it's iffy. What you're spending on a guitar like that, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're kind of seeing, there's some exotic wood stuff going on about this price range, but this is an intermediate guitar. They're still not made with super high end quality parts. They're made with better woods. They're better crafted, and they're made in some of the better factories in East Asia. And then you're getting into a few that are made in Mexico and right on the cusp of stuff being made in America. Here's one. This PRS SE Custom 24. I bet that's a rock solid guitar. And I think that's probably made in Korea. A lot of these guitars are made in the same factories too. Keep that in mind. Okay, so I mean that's an intermediate guitar. So at this point, we're up to almost $800. This is in the $800 range, $850. So that's where, to me, like right around $800 is the intermediate guitar. So around $800 to about $1,400. There's a huge price swing here in this range, and this is where the majority of the guitars live. This is the bulk of what I would call player guitars. And what I mean by players is this is a guitar I would feel comfortable taking on stage, knowing that it's going to perform and not fall apart or have issues or tuning or a pot's going to crap out or something's going to pop loose in the electronics. These are generally considered a player's guitar, something you could take live to the stage and perform with. And so what you're seeing at this price range, you're getting some higher quality electronics, an even greater selection of finishes. You're getting some binding options on some of these guitars, some inlay. There's still some cosmetic things that aren't necessarily all that important to the guitar for how it performs, but it's cosmetically, they're gonna get you on some of the cosmetics. Some of you are gonna fall in love with some of these guitars just based on the cosmetics. Here, you get some other very strange shaped guitars in this price range. Again, some beautiful quilted maple tops. What else? I think the Floyd systems, we're starting to get to a point where the Floyd systems would be actually worth purchasing. I'm assuming they're getting close to the Floyd 1000 series. I'm hoping the Schecter at $1,100 has a proper Floyd Rose. This thing's equipped with EMG pickups. I know you can get those on some of the less expensive guitars. So you're getting into name brand pickups now, which for me is important. I think a lot of, here we go. We can start arguing about where the tone comes from, but a lot of the tone of an electric guitar comes from the electronics, right? It's a vibrating string through the wood. It's going through the pickups. So however it's picking up those frequencies is important. How loud the frequencies coming through, how much top end, bottom end, how much mids are coming through, how clear it is, the harmonic content it's picking up. Pickups are vital in the instruments and how they sound. I mean, they're if they're not 90% of it, they're close to that number. So these are guitars that will, some of these will have locking tuners, which I think is an important thing of the guitars I own. Of the guitars I own, I think every single one of my electric guitars actually has locking tuners on it. That's how important I think it is, because tuning is just of the utmost importance to me. So, I mean, yeah, here's a really nice barrel finish on this Dean. I'm not playing a lot of Deans. That's a nice looking guitar. So yeah, here's the spot where I think if you're gonna spend on a guitar and maybe match the value to the quality, this is probably the closest spot you're gonna get on a new guitar to buy a new guitar. This is where the rubber kind of meets the road. If you're spending money on a guitar, this is where it's at, where it all comes together. It's just, which one do you like? Does it match your specifications on what music style of music you're playing? The feel of it, the look of it, right? That really does come into play. So this is kind of that spot, and Guitar Center has at this price range. And again, the prices are not perfect to kind of my pricing tiers, but there's 508 guitars to look at here at $1,000 to $1,500. So this is the majority of their sales, is right at this price range. This is where they have kind of said, we're going to make, and I'll make a video on this. I made a guitar over here. It roughly cost me a little under $800 to make myself. So in my opinion, they're making $200-$300 a profit on each of these guitars. They can probably make it cheaper than I did making that guitar. So maybe they're making more profit than that, but they're making a 25% markup on it, 30%, somewhere in there on these guitars. Profit turnover on them. So, this is the bulk of the guitars they're selling, and they're made of good quality woods with decent electronics in them. Maybe not the top shelf electronics, but good stuff, good woods, not the elite pieces of wood, but they're good woods and decent hardware. And like I say, some of the Floyd systems and things where the Tremolo systems at this price range is where you're going to get something that will actually stay in tune, lock down the nut. You can wail on the whammy bar and it will hold pitch and bring you back to pitch. Yeah. So, so right here is kind of the sweet spot. So past this, let me just jump all this. I could, again, I could look at a bunch of these at that price range. You're getting into what I would say. So those are the player guitars, about $800 to $1,400. The professional series guitar is about $1,400 up to about $2,300. So I'm going to go to this 15 to 2,000. And you can see there's still a very good selection of guitars, 164. So this is kind of, they understand the professional player is buying guitars about this price range for the most part. This price range is where you are going to find the Fender shows up, the Fender, professional series guitar, the Gibson, standard guitars are going to fall generally in this price range. PRS is going to start showing up with their S2, which still has some, the electronics, because I own one. I know very well. The electronics are still, it's assembled in the US, but the electronics are still from the East, and they load it up. The Ibanez's are really good at this price range. They're going to stay in tune. Again, you can kind of wail on them. So you're going to get those style guitars. Here's a blacked out Gibson Les Paul, $1,600. Here's a Les Paul Studio. That's what I meant to say, Studio, not standard. Standard, again, you're getting into the finish. It's what you're wanting to pay for at this point. At this price range, these are good guitars. You should be getting a rock solid guitar. You're paying this kind of dough. This thing better do everything you want it to do. Now, that being said, I've picked up plenty of these guitars, and some of them were really bad. I don't want to name too many names, but I've picked up a few Shibsons in my life that weren't worth. I could have thrown it further than it was actually worth. So just know that going in. These S2s are just great guitars. I own an S2. It's more of the Gibson style. It's a Gibson that stays in tune. And I love it to death. I played it several shows live. It's an outstanding guitar. I gutted all the electronics out of it. The rest of the guitar was rock solid. I haven't had to change anything else. I just gutted the electronics to get the sounds I wanted out of it. It's loaded with Seymour Duncans now, and it's great. It's a great guitar. You're going to start. Here we go. Here's the Fender American Professional Series. So this is where this shows up. $1,700 is when you can finally purchase what I would consider a standard Stratocaster made by Fender. I mean, that's a lot of money. You're chunking down a lot of money. Same with the Tellies. You're finally able to get a Telecaster at $1,700 that Fender is willing to endorse and made in Corona, California. Here's a nice S2, 24 fret. You can get the high-end James Hetfield style Explorer ESP guitar, if that's what floats your boat. Yeah, so I mean, we can go through all these, but you get an idea. These are, look, Gibson Explorer at $1,900. Yikes. Yeah, that's a lot of money. So about, here we are at $2,000. Here's what you're buying at $2,000. You got quite a large selection of guitars. Again, whatever floats your boat at this point, but you're spending this kind of dough. It better do exactly what you want. I mean, this is at this point, the scale is completely tipping and the bell curve is falling off the diminishing returns portion of the show. So I have one final category, and I call it fancy finishes. I don't know what else to call it. Past this point, it's not a better guitar. It's just fancy. It's just fancy looking. So I'm going to flip the script here and just go to the most expensive guitars. Here we go for $35,000. It's a Game of Thrones House Targaryen Stratocaster. Why? I mean, you got to really love Game of Thrones for $35,000. Here's a Joe Strummer custom Rosewood relict Fender custom shop for $15,000. Here's a fancy PRS that looks ugly as sin to me, but someone loves it for $13,000. Here's a beat up Telecaster. Here's another beat up Telecaster for $12,500. Here's again, like a miscolored PRS. I don't care for it. Here's a 59 Les Paul for $11,500. So you see, this is the lawyer's guitar, is what I like to call them. This is when you're just buying things to collect them. I mean, you're not playing these guitars. Who's taking these guitars on stage except for like the major acts? Yeah, maybe Kirk Hammett's taking this $9,200 1959 Les Paul reissue on stage, but I'm not. I don't have that dough. These guitars are just that to me. Here, you can get a Mike Ness copy for $9,000. You're just paying for these finishes and the names, and have someone relic your guitar for you. To me, it's pretty outlandish to do that. And it's just not worth this kind of money to spend on stuff like that.
Well, that's my 2 cents on if you were to go to Guitar Center and buy a brand new guitar. So my advice, go play a lot of guitars. Figure out what you really like, what you really want, and go buy a used one. It's a lot like buying a car, except it holds better value. They're not worth paying for new. I just don't think so. All the guitars you see right there on my wall, all those name brand guitars, every single one of those I bought used. You know, that Telecaster for $1,700 was $900 to me. That Strat right there was about $900 to me. That PRS right there was like $800 to me. That Gibson Les Paul over there, which is the only Gibson Les Paul I own because it's the best quality one I could find, was made in 2002. It was $400. About the same price as that Epiphone, which is an outstanding guitar. So, it's my 2 cents. I would love to hear what you guys have to say on the topic. Just an old guy rattling about guitars and things that I love. So, hoping this was helpful to some of you. Maybe it's a lot of regurgitated information that a lot of you already know, but I love talking about it. So, love one another. Take care. We'll see you guys on the next episode. We'll see you.